Alrighty, so what we have here is a worsted weight yarn. I'm using a 5mm hook. I could use a 5.5, but this is a slightly lighter weight yarn, and so I'm splitting the difference between them. And I'm making a purse, so, I want them to be a little tighter or closer. So this one is to demonstrate color changing. I want to leave a fairly decent tail. I'm going to make my slip knot. I'm going to chain 4. I'm going to go in to the side of my stitch to make a loop. I'm going to pull through. I now have this tail and I'm just wrapping it around. It's really hard for you to see, but I think when you're holding it in your own hands, you'll be able to tell what I just did. What I did is I went around the outside of the loop that I just formed out of the crochet and then brought it out to the other side, because now I'm going to chain 3. That's my first post of my first double crochet cluster. I'm going to yarn over, and then I'm going down in the middle of that loop I just made and making sure that the string, the end tail string, also went under there. And I'm going to double crochet 1. I'm going to yarn over, go down through that whole hole, and double crochet 2, and that's my first cluster. I'm going to chain 1, because row 1 is all corners. That's all it is. So then that's 1, 2, 3. I'm going to chain 1. I'm just holding this string kind of off to the side out of my way. Down through the hole, 1, 2, 3. That's 3 clusters. So I'm going to chain 1 and make my last 3 double crochets. It's 2 and 3. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to go in through the top, and it's a little easier on this bigger yarn to see. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to go in and slip stitch through the top of this stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it through to finish it off. I'm going to trim this long enough that I'll be able to sew it. I'm going to pull my end. Now the reason that that just happened is that we are going to color change on each round of this, okay? So what I do, and it's interesting, I've seen a couple of other, in looking around to see how out of touch I am, I've seen a couple of other people do this and a couple of others don't. So I would say that it's like everything in crochet, everybody has their own way. What I do is I turn my work. Now, what I need to do is make my slip stitch, so I'm going to leave myself enough to sew in. I'm going to make my slip stitch. I'm going to put it on my hook, okay, and I'm going to yarn over once and hold it with my finger. Now I have turned, this is where I ended. I'm turning to the next hole, and I'm going to double crochet into that space. Okay, I'm going to show you again. This isn't the only time you're going to see it. What that does is it jogs me over so that my tie-ins aren't all in the same place. And by doing a standing, I actually call this something different. And I meant to tell you guys, well, my notes are questionable whether I had intended to tell you or not. I think in my head I had intended to tell you. I call this a working join, not a standing double crochet. One of the people that I saw that also turns her work does call this a standing double crochet. So I'm going to make my slip knot. I'm going to put the loop on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and then hold that yarn in place. Go down through the loop. Work the first 2 and the second 2 of what would be a double crochet, and now I have joined this new color. So that's 1, 2, 3 double crochets. Now, if you'll recall from the previous tutorial, I'm not making any chains or anything in between. I'm going to the next corner in my round 2, and I'm making my 3 double crochets and chain 1, and then 3 more double crochets in that same space, because this is the corner and we always have 2 clusters separated by a space for our corners. Okay, well, this stitch is alone on its thing, so I must be going to this other one. So I'm just going to go no double crochet, no nothing between them. And that's my first cluster, chain 1, second cluster, now I have 2 corners made. Now, this sews in down below. This will sew in on this round somewhere. And if you look at the direction it comes out at, I could really stitch it down either direction. In the future, when we have 2 ends on a row that are gonna pop out, you're gonna want one to go one way and one to go the other way, just so that when you're sewing in, they're not conflicting. You'll see that in a minute. So now, I'm just pulling this between my fingers to get it out of the way. And I'm gonna go down into this corner and I'm gonna work 1, 2, 3. That's my first cluster for this corner. Slide my yarn over a little bit. So that little knot down there made it a little tight. Did I chain 1? I don't think I did. I did. I will say it so that we both know that I did it. So chain 1. And I'm going to work my second cluster in this corner, making the corner complete. So that's 2 and 3. Now I only have the 1 cluster in this corner to finish this. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to go. Here's where we started this with my slip knot, and then we joined it down and worked it upside down as a working stitch. I'm just going to go right in here and slip stitch. I'm going to leave myself enough of an end that I can sew it in later. I'm going to pull it out. And now see, when I crochet over this, I have 2 ends. And what I like to do is take one direction and one the other direction. And when I crochet in here, then my stitches will hold the first round, and then I only have to sew it back and forth a couple times. But so then now it's time to switch back to the red. So I'm going to turn my work one corner. I might have, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and make myself a slip knot. Just like before, put my crochet hook in it. Now I'm going to yarn over once and hold it. I'm going to get my work. I'm going to slide it in from the front. I'm going to pull up my stitch. Ooh. And it'll tend to do that if you let go like I did. And it's a little wonky, but I think it'll hold. So now I want to make my first cluster for this corner. I'm going to go down into this space in the middle without a chain or anything else, because we don't chain except on the corners. Now this is a corner, so I'm going to work 2 clusters. I'm going to work the first one. Chain 1. I'm going to work the second one. So now I have my 2 plus my corner. There's the one in the middle. It just gets 1 cluster of 3 double crochets. We're going to go over here to this corner. Now, if you're thinking it through, every corner is always a cluster, a space, and a cluster. And we make a space by chaining. My pattern, I only use 1 chain in the corner. You'll find many that use 2. I use 1 because the spacing of my stitches doesn't get overblown and it doesn't buckle because of my tension. If you find that you're buckling on one because it's too tight, probably your hook is too small or your tension is a little tight. My recommendation would be to just stick with whatever you started with, and on the next project, try doing 2 instead of 1 and see if that loosens it back out a little bit. And the reason I say that is if you switch in the middle, there will be an obvious difference to the way that the fabric lays after you've made your piece. And so you can't change in the middle. And I would be super sad to tear this out, even this little, because I've changed color a couple times. So I will stick with what I did and count it as a learning experience. Now, as you saw, I just tucked those threads different directions. All it does is just sort of get you started. This is one of those tips that I put in my pattern. And if you are the exception that proves the rule, that's all you are. You are the exception that proves the rule. Do not ever think that that has finished your ends for you. It has not. Eventually they will work their way out. You will lose your piece. Or it will have weird little ends sticking out of it and frayed ends, and then you'll lose your piece. The people who tell you that you can just crochet over your ends and be done are lying to you. They may not know they are, and they are. So I'm going to finish this row and get myself done, and then show you what it looks like after you've done this more times. So there's that finished row. I'm going to go ahead. I chained 1. I'm going to go in under here like this. I'm going to cut my end. There's one of my own hairs. Talk about the cats. And I'm going to pull that through, and now I have where I started and where I finished. And just like over here, I'm going to pull these this direction after I join here and go all the way around. So this is where we will end up. You're going to change color. If you're changing color, you're going to change color every 2, every 1, however you've worked out your pattern in the pattern that I gave you. You're going to switch them, but this is how it ends up. So you have your corner pieces forming like this all the way out. You have your middle and your rings of color. This is actually going to be a purse with a pocket and a solid color. And then the solid red will form our, whoa, God, let's just knock everybody everywhere. The solid color will also form the outside edge and the strap of this purse. But there you go.